know I gotta stop entering the show like that, but it's too much fun. Yes, we have a new logo. Yes, we got a new theme song. Yes, I guess it could be a new season. Anyhow, welcome to episode 78 of the RC After Hours podcast. I'm your host, Andre Russo. Thank you for all the notes and comments and everything over the last week or so. We've had some fun, and it's a bit of an anniversary episode, and won't mess around, have some fun, talk to some people. We've got a guest on the show. I didn't even intro him yet, but I'll get to him in a second. First and foremost, I want to do a big shout out, and you guys are going to love this. I'm going over to, bang, here's the website. First and foremost, thank you to all the Patreons. You guys have been keeping the show going, and because of your efforts and contributions, I've been able to procure some new music, do some graphic works and everything. And yes, as I said, I just finished off the logo. It's not quite done yet, but it's good enough to go for the show. Got to do some tweaks and some fixes and everything, but eventually this new logo will be on, we'll get some stickers going, we'll get some ball caps, and some other little bit of merchandise and everything. But I figured it was time for a new flair. As I said, we're at a new stage in the podcast, and with the old, in with the new, hence the new podcast theme song. It's a song I'd heard a couple months ago, and I didn't want to put the money down right away, but it was on sale, so I finally snagged it. And I really like it. It's got a little bit of fire to it and everything. Kind of pump me up and make the show good. So on the Patreon site, on the Instagram site, you can see the new logo. Check it out. I've already retagged all the social media and all the podcast distribution points with that new logo. And once I'm done doing some little more tweaks and everything, it will be going out so you can pick up T-shirts and everything. So because we have not had T-shirts, we've not had a new look and style in a long time. So it is there. Okay. And the other cool thing for those listening, and I'll put all the information into the show as well onto the Instagram and Facebook page, Buddy RC is, they're doing a coupon code for us folks. I talked to TJ, who is an old friend of the community and everything, and he's now running their social media and working with them. And I managed to get, we were just chatting, and I retweeted one of their airplanes, and the OMP, their new balsa high wing, and he tagged me right away, and I'm just like, hey, what about a RC After Hours coupon code? And they came back, so 10% off. RC After Hours is the coupon code, Buddy RC. And check them out. And this is good till, I think, the end of October, Halloween. So, and we'll probably still going. We had a great time with some of our previous sponsors for the show, or people who are helping out the show with discounts and everything, and really showed them what the RC After Hours community can do as far as supporting and manufacture. These guys, they ship across the U.S. and everything. All right, fine. I'll be up front. The majority of the audience for this podcast is US based, so this just makes sense. So again, big shout out to Buddy RC, buddyrc.com, for supporting the RC After Hours podcast. And so this is for you guys. So if you're interested in supporting one of these guys, 10% discount. That can't be argued with. All right, let's get on with the show. Good evening, everybody who's listening to us live. And I'm going to bring up you can't see the man. The guy does this to me all the time. It's Alpha from RC After Hours. Well, you're on the podcast enough. It's Alpha from Motion RC. Good afternoon, sir. How you doing?
Afternoon.
So, Alpha's part of the podcast tonight. We were just chatting, and as I said, it's episode 78, Aiming for Perfection. And this is on so many levels, because we're going to talk about, I've just talked a little bit about trying to, really get this podcast to the next level and just really tweaking it and putting it out and working away. And then you got this guy, Alpha, who's just released this crazy new jet, which I'm going to say fits this theme. And then I'm busy playing with balsa planes and learning a whole lot. And, you've played with fuel or wet. I guess the term is wet aircraft for, power supplies and stuff like this over the last little while. So it just kind of works out. So, and we haven't talked to you. I think we haven't talked to Alpha in a bit. His last release was talking about what the Nexus, your balsa planes. So, running theme. Myself, I've still have not flown my two. Now I have two. I've got a glow plane, a little Cub, which I've socialized pictures on. Check out our Instagram and everything, RC Afterhours on Instagram. And obviously I've got the Extra, which is a gas plane. And I've been working my way through. There is a substantial, I will say a substantial difference in working away and learning what is required to feed and keep a fuel plane happy. And it was things like I didn't even in the electric world. I mean, we're spoiled. We're honest to goodness spoiled when we walk into the field, dump our foam plane down, plug in our battery, and off we go. Right? I mean, you do your little checks and everything like that, and make sure everything is going. But I had no idea the level of prep that I want to roll in. And again, aiming for perfection. I want everything about this airplane to be proper. So right now I'm chasing the CG, and I thought I had it, and then I started studying stuff, and I wasn't happy how I was doing it. And so I'm taking weight off, I'm putting weight on. Of course, where's the weight? Under the cowl on the Extra. What's in front of all that? 5 bolts, right? The spinner plus the 4 bolts holding on the prop. So it's every time that's all that comes off. 2 more to get the cowl off. 4 more, sorry, to get the cowl off. And then I got to get this whole thing off the over top of the batteries and all this stuff. But I'm close. I'm really close. One of my buddies, Carl, who's building a giant B-17, he's done a big P-40 before, suggested a different way using triangulation to hoist the airplane up and just to find the CG. And then our friend Seth from Flex also said I could also use scales if I wanted to as well. So I'm close. I'm really close. It was funny. At one point, I thought I had it, and then I was like, wow, this thing is a little weird. And then I forgot to actually put the canopy on the airplane. So it was like, okay, there's a lot to take in, a lot to focus. And I got a treat for everybody. You can, Alpha, if you're watching it on YouTube, actually, yeah, you are. All right. You can comment through this too, but for the audio people, you're gonna love this. I actually have a recording of me starting this airplane. This was probably the second time of getting it going, and this is the Extra with an EME 60. It's been in a 24x10 prop. It has got a canister, so it is a little quieter than I think a little of them. But but here we go. You ready? Hold on. So I have subsequently I have run this airplane before. Alpha, you're probably hearing it on the delay, but it's so good. I'm running through everything. I'm learning about setting the highs and lows on the motor. And the last run I did, I actually had finally built a stand. And I'm doing this all at home in the backyard, on the driveway and so forth, just because I haven't had the desire to get out to the field with it. And at 500 RPMs, it moved the stand. So I had to put the stand down, and it sounds like 10 lawnmowers. Well, basically, it's a 2-stroke. Is this 2-stroke? Yeah, I guess this one's a 2-stroke,
You're right? It's a EME 60?
Yes, it is. Yeah. But gas-powered, so then, and it's things like, getting the ratio for the fuel-to-oil ratio. So I'm there, and I'm, okay, let's go down to fluid ounces, and I get my little syringe thing, and it's all these little steps that I'm having to actually learn and walk myself through and just read. I've got a huge shout out to I have my RC inner circle, like the people I go directly to ask questions, because if you post something online, you ask a question online, it's almost overwhelming, right? Because everybody has a way to do it. And so I've learned, and this goes back to the car days, you ask those people, you ask those trusted sources, right? Because it is legitimately overwhelming because there are so many different ways to do it. So, but I'm learning I'm stepping my way through all of this, and I'm really looking forward to flying this plane. I'm excited. So Alpha, tell us, what kind of fuel experience do you have?
I started on fuel. I mean, the good kind of dope, as we call it, Japanese tissue paper and dope,
Yep.
and Cox 010s, little
Nice.
babies.
Yeah. Yep.
0 for 9 was big at the time, and so the 010, 025s was more accessible. And then all the way up to Moki most recently. We just brought our own line of Admiral gas engines specifically because most of us here are actually gas guys. Martin and Wayne, we all started with gas decades ago. So hearing your excitement and seeing you start up and you're going through all the differences, right? It's just exciting because it's a circle. Whether people come in on the electric side and go gas, or they're coming from liquid fuels into electric or foam or whatever, it's all there's always something fun when you're discovering something new.
Well, this is it, and it's funny because the glow plane, the Cub that I've got, which is a Goldberg, yes. So it's the anniversary edition, clip wing, red. It's cool. It's got a 65 4-stroke 0.65 motor. So, but it's glow. So I'm like, and it was just, you know what? I want to try this. It came with floats, so it's going to be a fun winter plane, and it's just getting those experiences in. So, it's going to be just those stepping. I initially had said to myself I was going to avoid glow because I didn't want two different fuels, but ta-da, right? It just, the opportunity came, right? And I don't, like I said, with everything that's going on right now, I really don't know, and I said this in the last podcast, I don't know when I'm actually going to see that Hangar 9 Cub, which is, it's tragic, but it's fascinating that you say that you've, you're bringing some gas engines of your own, so that'll be interesting. What sizes?
We brought in a 60cc and a 125cc to start. Just dropped the link into chat. So we've had NGH for a while now. There's a lot of great engine manufacturers out there. I'd like to saw all the good ones, and in the meantime, we're building out with models under our own brand. So there's an inline coming. There's a couple of fun things coming for our gas brethren.
Cool.
But yeah, those two seem to be the size that. I mean, yours is 60. Most aircraft have also stuff from Nexa and from Black Horse. That's really the holds in the lineup. We needed that big 125.
Yeah. Well, you've got some, in that lineup, in your lineup there's some big aircraft. But I tell you, there's just something. Obviously, you're walking through so many safety steps when you're firing this thing up, and getting there, and and you're like, and I tell you, I'm sweating. The heart rate is up and everything, and you're like thump, thump, and the guys are like, well, okay, when your choke's on, it'll just pop, and I'm like, there was no pop. It jumped to life and scared the jumping.
Yeah, it's impressive. Right? You're doing it alone, right? Yeah, I learned. I had guys at the field sort of saying, "Don't do that, do that, do that." So impressive that you're, you're figuring this out as you go.
Well, no, like I said, I've got that inner circle, and then there are some really good resources. One of the videos that I watched, and it was something, it was funny because I had said to a couple friends, I've worked on race car engines. I should be able to figure this out. And it was just, okay, where are we going? And like you said, someone had said to me, it's the fuel, the air, and the fire. And I'm like, okay, we tick, 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 and just running the diagnostics through all this stuff. And there's some really good, I forgot it. I think it might be from Hobbyco. They had a really good walk the basics through of starting up a gas engine, right? And it was like this. And then I've got my phone and I'm taking notes and I'm like, okay, this is what's worked. And like I said, if I stepped through everything I had to go through in the last couple of days, and it was like, like the checklists are going off. I'm like, okay, I've got it running. I've gotten comfortable running it. Let's tune the the throttle servo so that when I drop the throttle down it stays at idle. And then I ran out of gas. So I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to put fuel into it right now because now I have an opportunity to check the CG, and that turned into a whole, it's just like one step after another. And it's just amazing because this thing is big. This is a really big aircraft, and like a low wing style aircraft. It's really cumbersome to get your hands underneath. So I was like hunting for that CG point, and like I knew where the CG point was, but just to try and do it. And then I started, Googling, okay, what kind of stand could I use and all. It's just like, wow. And like all I'm really concerned about is just making sure this aircraft is proper, set up, and working. So when I go to the field, after I strip it all down and cram it into my car, I don't know if I showed you photos of that, but it's, it's interesting getting it into the car. It fits. It actually fits in the car, especially once you take off the landing gear off the back, the tail gear and everything. It's, it'll do it. Down the road, definitely a trailer. But this is just the next generation of where I'm going with the hobby and everything. So it's exciting. It's kind of fun to try all these different things, and who knows where it's going to lead me. But there's still a market. There's still a need. There's still a desire to fly those electric airplanes and everything. So, and then glow fuel and everything. And we'll. I want to get Joshua Orchard back on because he's had some successes and then some successive failures with his recent endeavors into glow and fuel. So. Who knows? So it's interesting listening to people's comments and everything, and going back and listening to some of the feedback through the podcast and everything. It was like, when are you going to try balsa? And I'm still building the biplane, the Waco. I'm going to do it. The biplane. Let's stick with the biplane. It's still, you can see it in the video behind the current plane. It's still in production. It's still being worked on, but there are technical difficulties. Critical parts to the project are locked away in a shop that's closed due to our current situation. So maybe the plane won't fly till the fall. Maybe it'll fly next spring. Either way, I'm just kind of taking my time. So I think my plan for that one is to house it, store it for now, and then over the winter I can finish building it off, because really it's just covering the wing, the lower wing, putting those servos in, and then going over the fuselage and doing all the tail section and everything. So it'll live one day. I almost turned it into a gas plane again. It was originally a big nitro or big glow plane. I'm almost considered looking into a gasser for it, but I decided electric will be nice because then I can store it in the house. That's the problem with the gas planes too, right? Anything with fuel stays outside, because I tell you, I was cleaning the glow pump because it wasn't working right, and I had to open it all up. And man, I thought gasoline was a smelly, sticky, icky procedure. I've forgotten how bad glow is.
Yeah, no glow in the house.
Glow fuel is just, and like old. This stuff was old glow fuel. Blah, I can't talk. So it's good stuff. I'm reading some of the comments on it. The Hangar, the guys, they will be on the podcast. They're shipping out a product. They're Wasp with a Canadian RCAF Canada 150 decal package. So that's gonna be cool. I look forward to that build. That's a fun little foam airplane. So yeah. All right. We got Alpha on the show, and man, you guys. You had said in previous shows, hold on to your hats, folks, and you weren't lying, man. Holy moly! So, to walk us through this one. I wanna hear. Look at this thing. For those who are listening to the podcast, we're looking at the Freewing MiG-29 Fulcrum Digital Camo Twin 80 mil. This thing is a monster. There's a photo there of James, who is not a small man.
6'2" something.
6'2".
Yeah, it's a 74-inch bird, 1/9 scale. So it's big. People said they wanted big. We've done small. We've done medium. We've done sort of big. This is big.
Well, your was it the F-22? That was no small potatoes aircraft either, but this thing
Not a small. Yeah. Once you get to those twin 80s, the A-10 before it was a 1/10 scale, and big airplane. We thought to do a 1/10 because then it would have fit. It would have slotted in real nice. But 1/9 seemed to be better because the L-39, the MiG-21, the Venom, a lot of the European birds are 1/9 scale. And we were sort of just going for how big could we make this thing and still make it fit in a box?
Well,
and it turned out to be big.
I mean, you at one point just had to be giggling with this thing sitting on a bench.
Oh yeah.
This thing is just with the ordnance and everything.
But James is 6 foot, and James and I are 6 foot, and a lot of our partners here in China are closer to 5'10", so it's even more. We just did the AL-37 a little while ago, and they're like, these are these big airplanes. But of course, on balance, in the past 12 months, we've had small birds in there as well. But this one it had to be big. A Fulcrum's always going to be big. We've already done. Freewing did for Sabart 10 years ago a twin 70 MiG, which was smaller.
Mm-hmm.
We already have the twin 70 Su-35. There's other twin 70s out there, so we thought, do something different. Go big. Luke, I do remember nitro ducted fans. I got started on ICDFs, and they were my favorite.
Those
loud.
They would make a wicked sound, wouldn't they?
They really would, and they're insanely fast. Had a Turbinator long ago running ICDF, but maybe those will come back. In fact, I think, if I'm not going crazy, I think Brent Hecht, Corsair Nut on RC Groups, he put an ICDF into his, I want to say it was Chris Wolf's Jet Hanger A7 recently. He brought it back, sort of expecting that bird's going to get a big 90 or 10S 12S power system or K60 or K80, and he put an ICDF in it. I seem to remember seeing his Instagram or something. So back in the day, good sounds, all good time.
All right, so mocking up something like this, when you make this kind of decision that, okay, we're going to go 1/9 scale and everything, at what point is it too big for the foam?
There's definitely a point. I mean, there's definitely a point. It depends on the aircraft. You look at the E-Flite Carbon ZT-28. I mean, I love that airplane. It's a big airplane, 1983 millimeters, I think, off the top of my head, give or take. And that's a big aircraft, big straight wing, flies around really, really well. Our Twin 80 A10, 1700 millimeter or 1.8 on the AL-37. And those aircraft fly really well. It's a mixture of just your wingspan and your overall wing loading. So you just have to look at it. We could make these bigger. I mean, HSD has large foam aircraft. It's just, big plus affordable plus shippable in a box worldwide plus easy to assemble. All those smaller considerations really add up. And for this aircraft, for the target price point we wanted in this day and age, Twin 80 was where it was at.
You know what? Honestly, I'm looking over some of the photos for the very first time. I mean, I haven't even flown my MiG 30 yet, so I'm like, okay, this is just, and that's a handful just to move it around and everything. This is impressive. I mean, you had to be having fun. You had to be giggling at it. Even in the mock-up stage,
Fly the 70 at the factory. We still have an old twin 70 Sabart built by Freewing MiG-29. That was designed for like 3D, completely different mission, different material, sort of different all the way around. Really more meant to be like a hand toss jet that could hover. And so we still fly it. And when we started to drive around the idea and really hone down the size that it would be and the displacement. So we're looking at we use AR augmented reality visualization software to sort of see how large it's going to be in a given space. And we're looking at it thinking, that's going to be a big airplane. The initial prototype was smaller. Actually, just did a live stream on Twitch for the first time. Alpha Makes which is my new Twitch thing. So we did one about 2 hours ago. People were asking about it, for example, leading edge flaps. And that was one of the things that was in the prototype. The prototype was smaller. And we thought, you know what, I think we can ditch those because those aren't really enhancing the flight performance and pour those resources into making the aircraft bigger. And it isn't just going to make it big for the sake of making it big. It still needs to fly really well, which is, I think, what we ultimately ended up doing. It's the weight of 2 of our T-33s, but it uses it's slightly less than the weight of 2 T-33s.
Yeah.
But it's used 2 T-33 80 millimeter in-runner power systems. So everyone who's flown that aircraft, most people seem to love it. It's got 2 of those, and it's less than double the weight. So trying to narrow down that flight profile was important, and the MiG-29's a fun aircraft to design.
So for transport, like, how does it break down?
So James actually posted in Hobby Squawk, TCAT and a couple of the other guys this morning were asking specific questions like that because it's big. And your first question is, can I fit it? So for example, your total length is 74 inches, but 12 inches of that is the nose cone.
Yeah.
Nose and the pitot. So, if you remove that, you're back to under 6 foot. You're back to,
back seat.
You're back to 62 inches.
Yeah.
So 62 inches is closer to what our 90s are, like an F-18 or like an F-22. So it sounds like it's really big, and it is, but a whole foot comes off with the pop of a magnet. And now your length is more manageable. The wingspan is a lot, but it's still less than, say, like our Venom. So you shouldn't have to take, if you got a couple inches either way on your length and height in your vehicle, you shouldn't have to take the wings off.
Cool. And I guess, one of the advantages, you've got the nose section with the gear up and everything. Gear aren't on the wings, so that's kind of nice where they're in the mains and stuff like this. So that's helpful.
The other thing. We tuck the mains that they twist and rotate into the wing root, so they're closed up, they're covered up. So that's nice. There's less stuff hanging off the bottom to worry about when you're transporting. Plastic caps on the intakes, the standard stuff we do these days. Yeah,
that's been a nice little thing because then you can, if you set it down, you're not worried about crushing that front end, and you can make a foam tray and just slide it into the car like you said. So really, you're watching the extremities of your wing tips and obviously your vertical tips and everything. So.
Yep, exactly.
That's pretty
so
cool.
We've got dimensions, guys, in Hobby Squawk. Maybe I'll drop a link here if I can go find it. But there's dimensions showing if you took one of the wings off or both of the wings off, what's the minimum sort of dimension you can get this thing narrow? What's the width between the horizontal stabs, the height up to the top of the vertical stabs, to figure if you can fit it in your car. Suffice to say, we do a lot of our transport in minivans.
Yeah.
Standard minivans or a standard SUV. It's a Chinese brand SUV, but it's a Ford
Escape.
It's like an Escape. Yeah, it's an Escape, and we can get it into an Escape. So, I don't think we're ever gonna get. Well, with the balsa we already have, but for foam, it's really tough for me to imagine making an aircraft that requires you to take off both wings. One wing is fine. It's 2 screws.
Yeah.
But making the jump to 2 wings, I think at that point I would rather be making a balsa aircraft.
Yeah, because you can build up, you can do the screws and everything. That's on the extra. It's the wing comes off. And then obviously there's no flaps or anything. I'm assuming your standard multi-pin connectors and everything for your wings, kind of like the technology that you guys are rolling out modern on all your modern aircraft.
Yeah.
Cool. Lots of ordnance. How does it fly with the ordnance?
So this one we specifically designed to fly with it, like the A-10. 4 years ago when we released the 80 millimeter A-10, it included the ordnance. A lot of people said, "Oh, is it going to fly with it?" And the answer overwhelmingly was yes. Would it fly better without it? Most often, yeah. But there are tweaks and things you can do just to make sure that their presence, you're not really dealing with weight so much as you are just drag.
Yeah.
Like the angles that they're facing relative to airflow, like those types of things. There's things we can do that aren't visually sort of stark that make it fly better with Ordnance. So we designed this one to fly. All of our flight videos that we've posted so far and everything you're going to see in future, we're always going to fly it with at least the Archers. It's got 4 Archers on it, if not the 2 the inbound 8s. But it looks so cool with the Ordnance. It has to be able to fly.
It does, and I'm sure, and it's funny because Lee Davis said a lot of people would love a C-105. So it's funny. It's a CF-105. It's funny. I mean, the moment you release a big aircraft, I'm sure everybody else is just like, well, what about this one and what about that one? And your shopping list or your make list goes up. Because let's see, looking at your releases, so you're probably due for a World War II multi-engine next,
Yeah, I keep saying in hindsight, we're not curing cancer. There's no rocket science over here. I mean, in hindsight, what we've done is pretty, I think, clear to see. There's a general cadence with our releases, and we sort of, at risk of being predictable, we're sort of predictable. It's good to be consistent, for people to get consistent.
Yeah, and and you're the summer the summer unfortunately was, well, I guess you guys probably didn't have too bad of a summer and everything, and a lot of people are going to look forward to what's going to be under the Christmas tree next, coming up. I can't believe I just said that. Holy crap, it's only August, Andre. but looking forward, right?
Yeah, it's coming.
Winter's coming. I can't believe I just said that. It's fun. Honestly, this one didn't. We saw all the tweets and the guys were like, I wonder what it's gonna be. And at first I was like, oh, and then I saw the scale. Once I saw the scale, I'm like, I know what they're after. I know the presents. So September. So this one's already on the boat, I assume.
Yeah, they're already on their way. So short pre-order. With other aircraft, again, we try to change it up. There's usually a 2-month wait, and then there's a 4-week wait, and then there tends to be 8 to 10 week wait or so, and then every now and again we'll say it's in stock. That's we're sort of in that same pattern. This one we wanted it to be shorter because the OV10 was a little longer. The T-33 before it was about medium. So this one will be here next month. We're talking to a couple of guys like Pat in Arizona. They're going to be going to the St. George event at the end of September. So I think it's the 24th to the 28th in St. George, Utah. So there's about 6 guys right now who are saying that they've got the MiG pre-ordered and
fingers crossed kind of thing. Yeah. Now, okay, so on a really big ship like this, like we're talking numbers and ratios and everything, do you go, okay, we're going to take the order hit, because I know everything's a balance. Everything's do you say, okay, we're going to order, X number? Normally, on a smaller aircraft, we have our stats and everything. Do you just go, okay, let's put this thing in. If they don't sell all the way, they can sit in the storage and wait till people buy them? Or do you pull a Ferrari and say, okay, I know 1,000 people want this aircraft, so we're going to make 900.
Yeah, I wish. You're over $500,000 in before you sell us the one. So we can't. Unfortunately, we can't sort of say. We can neither say, "Oh, if they don't sell, we'll just put them in the back," nor can we say we're only going to make a few. We can't do the exclusivity play. So it has to be successful. I mean, guys. How many of you are going to drop $500,000 hoping that your buddy's buy an airplane? It's not. We can't leave it to chance. So that's where we depend and rely and appreciate customer feedback. So we can say, what do you want to come next? And more than specific models, we're looking for themes, trends. Mm-hmm. I'm flying on grass now. All right, more stuff gets suspension gear. I like bigger. Okay, well, we're going big. But there's always going to be the people saying, but I'm flying in my backyard because my field's closed. Okay, you got to have something small. So to answer your question as far as quantity and projections without getting to all like the secret sauce stuff. We try to be sensible, we try to be smart, we try to be sustainable, and as long as that continues, we've been okay. I mean, I think we continue to produce more aircraft. The world's in the middle of a pandemic. We've continued unabated. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Because to us, we judge each product, whether it be a small airplane or a big airplane, balsa or foam, whether it be introducing the new Admiral gas engines or onboarding a brand like Tamiya or Kyosho, which we've done in the past month. Like, all of those decisions are still judged on their own merit. Who's going to buy cars, who's going to buy boats, and we just trust the community that they'll respond. If they don't like it, they'll tell us, and that'll be good too.
Yeah, I'm sure you're getting a lot of feedback now about, and you're correct in knowing it. Unfortunately for you guys, it's the you're getting feedback now, and you're having to anticipate 6 months down the road. I mean, was there a moment where like you were thinking about this aircraft, going, ooh, like, did you have to think about pushing pause on that button?
Luckily not. The MiG's been. We finished that bird almost a year ago.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we paused it. Another one of the themes, if sort of listeners go back and listen to all the stuff we talk about our airplanes over the years, they take a year and a half or more to make, but we don't always, even after that time, doesn't mean we're going to make them immediately once they're ready to be made. After something is made, we sit and we read the tea leaves, we listen to the community and make our decisions. So with this aircraft, we had it done last summer, but we had just had the 90 millimeter F-22. It was very quickly followed by the F-35, and then very quickly followed after that by the F-18. And we also knew that we had repaints for the L-39 and the Mirage, and then we knew, of course, we had the AL-37 coming up very shortly after. So we sort of said, well, rather than keep pushing bigger, faster, more expensive birds, let's push this one back and bring up the AL-37. That's a more universally applicable, appealable aircraft. And it turned out to be the right decision. And that allowed us to have these aircraft in the hopper such that now throughout the doldrum period post CNY and in the summer, we're still releasing new fun stuff that it just so happens we've been playing with them for 9 months.
Nice.
Yeah. Who was it? Perfection had a question about the gear. I just wanted to hear about the mains and how they are secured in the airplane. Yes, a good question. So the MiG-29 uses all new retract units. These are twists and turns. They're big. And how the mains attach through our standard plastic. It's the retract housing that then bolts into a plastic housing. The plastic housing is molded into and glued into the wing root of the aircraft. So one of the changes that we've done, or one of the tweaks we did for this aircraft, is building up on feedback from, for example, the Freewing twin 70 millimeter SU-35. That's been out in the world for 10 years or so. A lot of feedback on it. Long bird, similar planform to the MiG-29, and there are some weaknesses in the nose retract and in the mains on that aircraft. Granted, it was made out of EPS and their plastic mounts were a lot smaller, but we know a lot more now than Freewing did back then. And so how do they attach to the aircraft? Securely. Based on that type of information. There are failure points designed into it. We want the follower arm on the nose wheel, for example, to snap before it snaps the pin in the trunnion, because those are more difficult to service. So those types of things, following the fault line, as it were, from impact up into the structure. We want something to break to be something that's further outside of the aircraft rather than ripping the whole foam block out like some people have had with older generation Freewing aircraft.
Is it? I suppose the phrase "bigger flies better." Is it easier to design something at this scale and get it to fly the way you want it to fly, and know that you're building a predictable airframe?
There's definitely more base, it's easier at the outset because there's more space. You have more space to fit stuff. It becomes more difficult later down the road because you need to deal with the context of the medium. Foam and plywood and aluminum joiners and carbon spars, all those types of things, the multi-materials that we and other manufacturers use to reinforce the wings on these aircraft, that calculation can run away from you very quickly. Before you know it, you're 10% sort of over budget on wing loading, which will significantly impact how certain aircraft fly. So, big is good initially, but you always have to worry about weight. Also, the math obviously changes. As someone can imagine, take a thin foam board, take a 30 centimeter or take a 1-inch thick foam board and apply a kilo or a couple pounds of weight on it, and then double that. The amount of flex you're going to get in that foam and how much thickness in foam you're going to need to add to limit that amount of flex, it's exponential. It's 2.5 times, it's 3 times. So you can't necessarily do that when you're bounded by keeping the aircraft in a box of a certain size, right? So that's where you have to, if you can't make it thicker in foam, you have to add carbon. But if you're adding carbon, it's got to go into a plastic retainer. If you're adding plastic, now that's another plastic mold. It runs away from you very quickly. The reason why, who was it? I think it was Lee asking if we're making less expensive. Yes, Lee, we got lots of smaller stuff coming. The reason why we like making the $100 planes like the Shrike or the Havoc, for example, from Skynetic, is because those are much simpler. You make sure that they're rigid, where they're not going to fall apart, and that's about it. You're not worried about all the other complexities with
Yeah, well, I mean, and you've told the story about the F-14 and just the myriad of issues to get that aircraft to fly, and again, fly reliable, and just all that internal working mechanism. So, it's interesting that something this big, and like you said, do you feel you're on the cusp of okay, any bigger than this scale and the foam and, like you said, all these other materials, we can't go any bigger?
We're there. We can go bigger, but we fall off the cliff in value.
Yeah.
There's that aircraft is basically 2 T-33 Inrunner, high performance editions, $400. You stuff them in one box, and you charge $600. I mean, just how do we do that?
Yeah.
We can make them bigger, but it's the next one. It would jump 10% more size, to use round numbers. You'd be 25% more costs. I don't know that there are a lot of us out there, at that price point.
Well, I told you what this bad boy shipped was going to cost me if I bought one, and I'm kind of like,
Ever.
Yeah, it's too much.
Aaron, you're absolutely right. Aaron Crosby, astute to observe. Shipping is a big concern of ours. Yeah. Ocean RC pays free shipping for anything over $100 within the United States. Sorry, Canada.
Yeah, I know.
But if you imagine that box is $60, $50.
Yeah.
It's, and you're not paying for that. I am.
Yeah.
So
and you're insuring it.
We're insuring it, and we're getting it from the factory to us. I mean, just the bigger these things are, we know, because Black Horse, some of our Black Horse and Nexa balsa aircraft, they come in 2 boxes, and we're talking $150 of shipping. So if at all we can avoid oversizing the box, we do. And when we make the box bigger, we know to the millimeter. It's a conscious decision. Why is that aircraft half an inch bigger than the shipping maximum for UPS before the shipping cost doubles? Well, because, and there's got to be a good reason after because we're paying for it, So that's why a lot of things could be done. Could we make a twin 90 millimeter SR-71? Of course we could. Would it cost me $150 to ship to people? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I want to do that? Probably not.
and that's an aircraft that you don't want to do like your car, the not the L-39, the airliner where you ship in 2 pieces, right? That aircraft will aesthetically will not Sorry, I'm reading Lee's comments about pennies in Canada. That's an aircraft that just cannot be done that way. Like you the way the wings and everything, it's just you're not going to be able to see that. So that's a composite or a balsa kind of build, kind of feel to it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's thresholds, but we want to be conscious of them. A great example is we also designed this aircraft to be able to accept at a later date an aftermarket sold separately 3D thrust vectoring system. It's not in the P&P because it's sold separately. But we designed the aircraft to be able to take that for people who wanted to pay the extra expense of buying the unit and bolting it in. That's not something we were going to bake into the P&P because, one, it would increase the cost of the P&P by 20%, which would result in a significantly lower adoption rate based on our data. And two, it'd probably get more people in trouble. And also, the aircraft flies amazingly without it. I mean, how many people really need to flat spin your MiG? So we want to make those options. That's sort of how we imagine straddling those two worlds. Catering to the masses, making something approachable, easy to fly. It's still a basic 6-channel airplane, but having a pathway for people who really want to take it to the next level on their own time and on their own dime. They can play, and we'll support them in that way as well. Victor's asking batteries. A big thing when we're talking about economy. It still flies as big as it is. Our videos you've seen so far, it's all 6S4000s. We've flown them on 5000s, on the 5100 carbons, and on 6000s, just because we know people will. And it flies them. Of course it fits. It's a big airplane.
It's got the room.
But you don't fly it. Same thing I've always said with the F-14. Could you fit 5800s in it? Sure. Do I fly with them? No. I designed it for 4000s. I fly 5 minutes. It's plenty enough for me. It's cheap. It's light. And that's how I like it.
Bill Decker says I should bring one home from Flight Fest next year. Well, if Flight Fest and all this stuff happens, I'm bringing home my carbon with the gas motor. Everything now, unfortunately for Andre, is pushed a year. So
yes, we have finally converted Andre to fuel.
Well, and you laugh, but I've got friends who are I won't say putting money down, but they're like, look, once you fly gas and you sit there and go, I just flew 8 minutes, landed, and I don't even have to refuel. I can go fly again. They're like, your life is going to change, your perception of flying. But I'm like, I'm still going to enjoy my batteries because there are going to be days where I'm not going to get out to the flying field. I'm just going to go to the park with the other crew and just have a good time there. Right? There's Tyler. Tyler talking about that, or he knows what I'm talking about. So I'm excited about this next thing. I'm a little upset that I haven't got to fly it yet, but I mean, I picked up the airplane in June. July was kind of mucky, but it's just, things will come, and I'm making those progressions, and I still have a litany of EDF jets that I haven't even flown yet. But it's funny because I haven't had the desire to fly the jets. Flying EDFs, and you probably know this, Alpha, there are probably days where you're just like, I don't want to fly this thing because I don't want to deal with the stress, it happens. It happens, like there's a lot going on in life for right now. And EDF flying, there's this level of anxiety, right? And it's like, I'm thundering through the sky with this thing at Mach 2. I need maximum focus. And it's like that 3 to 5 minutes of terror. I think I described it when I first started. But it's funny because once you get into that rhythm and you start going, it doesn't feel as bad. But I know the first time I go out, when I crack a jet open, I fly it the first time, it is just, the heart's pounding, the fingers are shaking while you transfer that down to the legs, right? But the adrenaline, it is a pure, I guess EDFs are really good adrenaline junkie aircraft, because you just get out there. And so, yeah. And then Aaron's saying, that's why I like my Radiant, because I get to relax. And yeah, and That's
Yep.
also the awesome part about this freaking hobby, right? There is a plane for every moment. It's too windy, high wing with lots of power. I want to go gliding. Well, there's your Radiant or whatever, or your DLG, right, Bill? Look at that behind you. That's going to go flying eventually. And just
I need
all
an
these
exercise.
things.
Here's your DLT. I want to do a math equation. Here's your turbine with your ECU setup. There's so many things that you could do. You're right.
Well, this
Something
is
for
it.
every.
This is it. It's funny because I look at the turbines and all that, we had that fantastic discussion with everybody who flies the turbines, and I just sit there and go, wow, that's. You get away with saying, look, this is a really nice aircraft. Yeah, your new jet costs a little bit of money, but turbines are just that's even further over the scale.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I can't wait to see what you guys do with this one. I can't wait to see what the community does with it. We say this every time because there's so many amazing paint jobs that this aircraft came out with. What made you go with the digital camo?
Yeah, so we were slated to do gray. At the time, this is last spring. We're thinking, the F-22 is gray, the F-35 is gray. We've got a gray version of the F-18. We've got gray aircraft in the pipeline. And we thought, surely we can do something else. Also, Freewing has a long history with camo Sukhois and MiGs. I mean, their very first Freewing's first model ever was a twin 64 Su-34. So that was a camo bird. Then they did their twin 70 MiG, and that wasn't gray. They had two air show schemes. Then they did the Su-35. And those had the fractal scheme, which is the blue, and then the splinter, which is the yellow. So they've never done a gray Sukhoi or Mikoyan, and I thought, well, let's keep that going, and we've used the tech of the 90mm F-22 and the 70mm F-35 to really, I think, hone our craft with water slide decals. The F-35 has rivets on some of the water slide decals that are smaller than pin pricks. They're really sharp printed, and they look great. So we thought that's a way that we could add dimensionality to the MiG and give it depth without using a paint mold. Paint mold is always going to have a bit of spray, but with digital, by printing these water slide digital camo overlays, we were able to achieve. There's hundreds of boxes and rectangles on the aircraft in 4 different colors, but from a mass production standpoint, it goes on pretty easily. So they're easy to repair for customers if you ever ding a wing or whatnot. But also for that short time in, you get something that's visually interesting. The first in the world, first production aircraft with this type of digital camo on it. So we get to check all the boxes that we like to. Unique, new, not been done before, still easily producible. And so far, people seem to like it. The couple people who don't, I say, well, that's why we did water slide, not vinyl. $5, 5 minutes of primer, and you're back to a gray airplane. Just paint right over it.
Nice.
But a couple of guys who are green camos and other liveries, so should be fun.
Well, that's actually, you bring up a really neat and interesting point in that, a lot of those graphics, unless you want to do sanding and all this stuff. So that's kind of neat that it lays down thinner, obviously, than the vinyl. And then I guess your sheen, you don't have as much, you don't have the plat. Well, yeah, that's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, there's silvering on water slide decals typically associated with the carrier on top of it. So that's another thing we tweak with the F-35 is working with different printers, decal printers, who can get us a closer, it's not matte, but it needs to be closer to the sheen of the foam around it. So that's something that we've been working on. And again, it's one of those things in hindsight, in hindsight that people might realize, when they did it on the F-22, they were testing out that approach for the F-35. And once they did it on the F-35, they then adapted that new skill set that we learned to a bigger aircraft like the MiG. We couldn't have done the MiG's scheme 2 years ago.
Nice.
We weren't really set up for those types of decals. So small steps, but that's how you get firsts.
So diving into this, where were some of the compromises? I mean, we know there's going to be a compromise besides the size and all that. Was there anything that you were kind of like, I really want to do this, but I know it's going to break the bank, so I have to go with this?
Yeah. So the 3D thrust vectoring was probably one. I'm a weirdo, so I happen to like flying my Mirage upside down most of the time, and so the thrust vectoring for the kind of pilot who likes to just make the scale guys just roll in their graves, I really like the idea of 3D thrust vectoring in the aircraft. At the same time, I recognize that's a whole lot of customer service calls. How do we set it up, or it crashed on me, or whatnot? And so that was not so much a compromise, but that was definitely a conscious decision to make the aircraft more accessible. The other one would probably be the undercarriage. We made some tweaks in the undercarriage to make it more practical. But again, you gotta know when to make those calls. So,
with something like this, like you look at some of the boards that the Flex, all the Flex aircraft use. Is that something that you guys are going to start looking into when you branch into something like this? Having a customized, like if you did do your vectoring, thrust, and everything, would you start putting a board into this thing so it's set up and it's controlling it and it's just so you kind of circumvent half that navigation that the pilot, or not the pilot, but the owners have to do?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because if you do all that work for the user, you're focusing all of that energy, that potential energy, on one part, as in it doesn't work, ergo it was your fault. So that becomes problematic for two reasons. First and foremost being, if you make it too easy, people, frankly, who shouldn't be flying the airplane start flying it. DJI. I mean, my nephew can buy one at Best Buy right now and go fly it into someone, and it's dangerous. I'm using an extreme example, obviously, but for example, turbines have any break in the hobby and in life, really, there are what I perceive are necessary plateaus, necessary steps beyond which someone really needs to have all the prerequisites and skill sets required in the previous stage to be able to progress to the next. If a turbine was truly turnkey, if you truly could go to Best Buy, like you could buy a DJI, and you can go buy a turbine, go buy a Spark or an Ultra Flash, and take it out to the field and turn it on and go take off, I think most of us listening would be horrified by that prospect, because it would be too simple, right? That person would have nothing would have been required of them before they could put that weapon in the sky. So to bring it back to something like the MiG or other aircraft, certainly putting a mixing board, an onboard gyro system, if it's awesome and it's great and it never works, that's gonna improve people's experience with the product up until it's not. And if it's not, if you need to disable the gyro on board, can you still fly the airplane? We're developing an aircraft now. Actually, the F-22 is another great example. The real aircraft, they're dimensionally unstable. They're not supposed to be able to fly. So initially we designed it so that it was supremely acrobatic, but inherently unstable. And we were going to bake in a gyro, because we have gyros with the Admiral stuff. We got Hobby Eagles and whatnot. So we looked at that option. Freewing produces their own gyro as well. We're going to say, well, why don't we package it with the gyro and just make sure that the gyro was always on? But what happens when it's not? If the pilot relies on that, that's a problem. If you're in a Champ, that's fine. If you're in a big jet like this, you need to learn how to fly, which means you need to know how to set it up, which means I'm not going to make it that easy for you.
Yep. Technical. The elevators, are they separate or are they a single channel?
Elevators, well, they're separate servos driven. They go into the board. The board synchronizes them into one output.
Gotcha.
But there's no logic. It's essentially a Y harness on a PC.
Yep. I was just curious because then, you could probably get into some really fun stuff, but you could also get
Yeah.
into trouble really fast.
In our live stream, we were quick to point out. We said, look, the turtle deck, so the canopy down to where the fuel cells are typically in the real aircraft, about midway in the fuselage, that entire piece, which is it's over a third of the length of the airplane. That's the battery hatch. The whole thing comes off, and you see the battery, the avionics bay in the middle, where the MFCB is, and where your receiver goes, and then the aft battery, which is closer to the CG. So we were saying, someone had asked, can I put a power box in there, or what other device can I put in there? Because he's thinking of doing a turbine conversion. And I said, look, you can put whatever you can in that area, but once you do, that's you. You want to break out your controls to do individually addressable trim, that's great. But, at that stage, that's you. The best we can do is make it as easy to access, which is frankly why we made the turtle deck that large. We knew people would be putting, I'll say, other power plants into the aircraft. So as much as we could make that easier to do, we tried. But yeah, spelling it out for everyone is probably never in the cards for us.
Very cool. Very cool. No, it's neat to see. That is it's got me captivated. I look forward to September when people start rolling this thing out and having a little fun with it, because I want to see what it can do. Like I said, I haven't even got mine out, but I don't even know if I'm going to fly any jets yet this year, so it's just the way it goes. But sheepers. Looking at the other offerings throughout the community this week, the last 2 weeks or so, I'm going to flip over to the website, and we can get your take on a few things too if you want, Alpha. But the Habu came back. 70 mil. And they dumped in. Obviously they've dumped in their board and everything, their AS3X, and I think it's got the safe on board. I'm getting used to Horizon changed their website, and it caught me off guard because I went to go to click on the what's new, and there was no what's new. So this is the P&P, so I don't actually have that right aircraft. Actually, I'm gonna go grab it and find it. Aircraft. Oh my, there we go. See, told you I'm not used to their website yet. Ready, bind and fly. Where's the Habu? Habu! I've actually never flown one of their Habu jets.
You've never flown back in, I think it was 2012, they did the Habu 2.
I know, and I've never, 2012 I wasn't actually flying an RC. So, come on, where is it? Do they have a bind and fly? They have to have a bind and fly version of that aircraft. Maybe they don't.
Pretty sure. They don't? I know the PNP's online.
Yeah, that's what I was on the PNP. Anyhow, we'll go back to that then. So there you go. That one's back. That's, I guess that's your equivalent smart jet. So that's referring to their ESC combo and everything. This design's been around for a while. I mean, I guess you guys have your versions of very similar aircraft, and kind of like your entry level, go and have some fun kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's important, I think, as citizens of the global hobby, everything can't be super fast, and everything certainly shouldn't be $50. You got to have that range. So yeah, the Habu back in the day, and I hope going forward, it's a good spot for people who want to get into an aircraft, like a 90 millimeter or like a 105 MHSD or turbines or whatever. You're going to start somewhere, and $220, $250 seems to be the sweet spot for new pilots in the 70 millimeter class. You got to get started somewhere.
Well, I mean, you make a very valid point, and I have friends who are all excited. Yeah, I got a jet for Christmas, and then they realized, oh, I need 6S packs, and it's like, wow. And I get messages going, I didn't realize how expensive some of that stuff is, and so yeah, it is nice to see. Wow, I didn't even realize this thing is a 3S jet. That's crazy. You can upgrade and fly it on 4S, which makes total sense. But, so it's kind of nice. I mean, you have to see that too in some of your numbers and your sales, where you get the one extreme, and then you get the other extreme, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And people run into like the battery issue. I also like to say, I mean, there's 8 years ago, there were a lot of people who joined us and said, look, I want to get to a turbine. And there's this sense that everyone enters at the same point, i.e. with like a T28, and they exit at the same point at like turbines. It's not true. Some people come in and they just say, I just like, once they know how to fly, assuming people know how to fly, they sort of pick their niche, and they only like 70s because they don't have grass. They're on paved surfaces. Or they say, I just want the big stuff because they have a historical connection. Or they say, I just like gliders because I'm in a windy area, or whatever the case may be. But the notion that people come in and then progress upward along a single track, which is to say that anyone who isn't, if you're not a turbine driver, that means you still have more to go in the hobby. I think that's, that doesn't fit. It's perfectly acceptable for people to come in, find something to like, stay right there, go up, go down. We've all had a drone. We've all had a helicopter, right? We've all crashed the helicopter. We've all done our experimentation. And I think that's all good. The challenge just becomes, for me, it's more about individual responsibility and accountability to help people, like we were all helped, hopefully, to learn safely. If someone can come in, and if we do it a lot at Motion RC, someone calls in and says, I want the F-14. It's awesome. We say, no, I can't sell you that airplane. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not going to sell you an Avanti to your 12-year-old son for Christmas. Like, your business. But our hobby is more important than a sale. So have you seen this little $80, flight stabilized UMX airplane? Have you seen this? Have you seen a simulator? Like, there are so many more safer ways to get people into flying, and then let their own skill set inform how they stay in the hobby. Because, crashed airplanes and angry mothers and suspicious, suspecting FAA people doesn't for our hobby.
Well, and so going back to something else you said, like, some people's fine, great, you're flying a turbine, you've got the skill set and everything. And like you said, some people are like, you know what? 70 mil is fast enough for me. That size is good enough for me. I can track it. I can fly it. I don't feel like I'm out of control. I can enjoy the hobby for what it is. I can fly safely. I can go and, Alex says something about instant gratification generation. Well, come on. The reason we love our jets, with our 6S packs is exactly that. There is no, like what we're just talking about in the podcast, there is no dealing with the fuel, checking out the balance and all this stuff. It's plug the jet in, go fly for 4 minutes, smile, giggle, land the thing, hopefully. 4 minutes is stretching it, Fly, yes, land, no, right? Thank you, Indiana Jones. So yeah, and part of what you're saying there's some comments about this aircraft, the Habu being pushed as your first jet, and you know what? That's what it was marketed for, and you guys have got your 70 mil jets that are marketed as your potential first jet, so it is valid. I mean, but this one,
personal, it comes down to. Companies, my company, other company, anyone's going to sort of position an aircraft as they see it.
Yeah,
that's fine. Companies are supposed to do. But as consumers, and I'm one too, I still listen. I trust and verify. So I may look at that and say, okay, so they're saying that it's 70 and it's a beginner, and is this the first plane I want to give to my son? I'm going to look at reviews. I'm going to go to a club, and that's where I think we all have a role to play.
Yes,
sort of saying, look,
yeah,
ma'am, why don't we buddy box him on my airplane first and see how he is? And if he's great, maybe sure, buy it. If he isn't, or have you tried a simulator at a hobby shop? I mean, there are a lot of ways where you can instantly know, is this something you can try or not? Now, there's a kid, he's no longer a kid, but at Apollo in Southern California, his name is Coco. He's on Instagram. He's one of those famous pilots, but he's one of those guys who was, I want to say he was 9 and then 10 years old several years ago. And he flew turbines, and he flew the pants off of them. He flew the paint off of a Velox and a Velox XL And he astounded all these pilots, me and everyone else. We've been flying for decades. He was better than us. He was more intuitive. He was more precise. He was more responsible. He set up the aircraft himself. That I would say is impressive. It's also demoralizing, but it's also an aberration, right? Most 10-year-olds would not be able to competently fly a turbine, whether or not that company was advertising themselves as a beginner. So, regardless of what any company says, mine and anyone else, people got to just use their heads and rely on other people to give honest, objective opinion. And then also give space, I think, for, hey, maybe the kid is a savant and he's going to be amazing. Great. But if he's not, there needs to be an adult there on the buddy box ready to save the aircraft and save it from hitting someone.
Yes. So it is fascinating. It is fun, and I'm loving some of the comments here. Everybody's saying in the live stream, John Davis. Hey man, just because I settled on high wings and sail means doesn't mean a Habu isn't pretty cool. And you're right. And I think we were some of my buddies. We were reminiscing, about some of the photos from 2016. So like 4 years ago, and the layout was much different as far as the aircraft was, and we've talked about it time and time again. Everybody's you move through this hobby and you do things and you change and like I said, I'm sitting here in the middle of a very different journey. So, yeah. Speaking of gliders, the Crescendo, yeah, the Crescendo, yeah, 1.5 meter bind and fly basic with safe select. I don't know why you would put safe select on a glider, but okay.
In case you had to take a nap.
Yeah, well, like Chris from days ago would talk about, flying their glider and everything, and just like, this is a fun aircraft. This is you bolt the wings on, you do your stunts and your flights and everything. It's a little bit more zippy of an aircraft versus the Radiant. And I have my Night Radiant. In fact, I have the module, and so the ESC is sitting here in front of me because I just got rid of the EC3 connector and put on my XT60. Giggle. Nice plane. I think I would still go with a Radiant, but this thing will boogie a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with a, like a more sporty class glider, I guess is the term we want to use. You can definitely have a lot of fun with it and just, beam it around, glide it around, get low, get dirty and power up, invert it,
Yeah. It's nice to have sport acrobatic gliders, I think.
Well, there's
a few of them out there, and the VTEL used to be a good one. There's a lot of balsa sailplanes that have been converted that still fly very well on electric.
Yep. And this one's got a nice range, 3S 1300 to 22, 4S 1000 to 22. So that's pretty good. I mean, you can run it on 4S. That means you can, whip it around. It's got the collapsing prop, so you could do some pretty aggressive dives and everything. And so, yes, lots of fun. Plug and play is the way to go from my experience. Yeah, Tyler, I agree. A lot of, all this stuff is fun. It's nice to have the bind and fly and some of the stuff. I actually don't mind the AS3X too much, especially in something like this, but I don't want safe. I find the safe just interferes with the flying experience. So.
Yeah, exactly. William Decker's building a bird at time. Todd, one of our guys on the team here at Motion RC, he finished his bird at time recently. That's a good airplane.
That's
beautiful. Yeah, looks beautiful, goes together really nicely, flies really well. If you only had one balsa plane in that format, bird at time.
Yeah. I mean, that's just that's like the granddaddy of all these aircraft that we love now. I mean, I still have my original Radiant, and it's funny. I've said it before. I don't fly the Radiant enough because it's almost one of those social airplanes where flying a glider of that scale and everything by yourself and just hanging around and putzing around, it's almost boring to have friends with you to sit there, not as crazy as Flight Fest, because when you have 20 or 30 freaking Radiants together in the air, it's traumatizing.
It's
You know, it's a really good word to describe it, right? Because you're sitting there.
Smoke bomb, you know,
Well, I
and as you're
mean, you do your.
just put out smoke and everyone's flying through your smoke screen.
Well, that's yeah, yeah. No, never, no. And we'd all do the crazy Ivans and turn left. It will be really interesting. You know, I have the light pack and everything. Thank you, Brian from Wingnuts, for sending me a new one. My other one wasn't switching from the channels and everything, so I wasn't getting a light show correctly. So I'm really looking forward to actually doing that and flying that aircraft. My only beef with the new Radian is screws. It's like I wish they had a better wing system to put it together. So anyone see a Radian flying left-handed circles? Yes. Yes, thank you, John. The most terrifying moment, 5 minutes of my life. Well,
Aaron's asking, do I try to fly most things that come out just to keep up on the competition? I try to fly most things that come out because I'm addicted to flying things. I wouldn't necessarily say it's because of the competition. It's a small world. We know most people. We're not curing cancer. Anyone who knows me over the years knows our attitude is we do our honest best to do our part for our part of the hobby. Other people do their parts. If we all do our part, we're fine. Life is short. So I don't see a lot of value in, it's just not really worth our time to go fly something and see, for the purpose of seeing what is in it. Because candidly, if I were to see something today that was really great in an airplane that was released today, it might be 2 years based on my current pipeline before I can release an aircraft that has, that thing about it. That responsiveness, it's too slow. By the time we, had what they had, if it really took us that long to weaponize, we'd be too late. So instead, we just try and focus on developing aircraft. We develop them based on user feedback and based on our 8 or so years and 50 airplanes of me doing this. And when it comes time to fly like new things, that's separate. I fly it because I want to fly everything. I want to buy every car. I want to buy every boat. I mean, kids,
that makes me laugh because there's a very famous picture of a post-it note that basically the ratio of exiting aircraft to entering aircraft and I've reached a point where it's just like I've run out of floor space and I'm all the fuel-based aircraft are now in the garage and I'm having to get very creative because there's bikes in there's a sports car in there. I'm a very spoiled, lucky man. Oh boy. Okay. There are a few questions here. We might actually take a minute to talk to Sam. Farmers RC. Hey guys. Welcome to the show and thank you for subscribing. Alex asked if you guys have been suffering from any backlog or back order issues. How is your supply and demand going?
Yeah, so I think this has been covered on news networks around the world. Hobbies seem to be seeing a resurgence. Puzzles are out of stock at Amazon and those types of things. So we've seen, thankfully, I think we have the best customers in the world. We haven't seen a massive drop off because one of the advantages of us being in Asia is we saw this thing coming. Remember we talked about this months ago?
Yes, sir.
Hope that I was wrong, but turns out we weren't. So we were able to sort of get ahead of the curve. Make no mistake, we've needed to make a lot of hard decisions and a lot of changes to stay ahead of the situation. But the result is we've stayed ahead of the situation. So even in the past 2 months, when this has gotten really bad, we've announced Corrali, we've announced Tamiya. We've brought in all the Tamiya stuff and Tamiya paint, Tamiya trucks, and Tamiya tanks. We brought in Kyosho. We announced the MiG-29. We did the OV-10. We just continue on. In the past 6 months, we've brought in tanks and boats and 3 other brands we never had before. The Nexa Balsa Incorporation. It's almost as if,
And my buddy on the chat right now, Tyler, who works at Great Hobbies, who have been doing an amazing job taking care of this guy as he merges into the gas and the fuel. He like even they were seeing like even in the beginning of the year, like Christmas. He says like insane resurgent in the hobby. Probably not the huge focus on flying and stuff like this, but like the ground-based vehicles and everything, especially with all the rule changes and stuff like that. But just an uptick in the entire hobby. And every time I go into that store with even in the current situation with everybody wearing masks and everything, it's always got people in it. So it's fascinating and really good to see. I mean, like you said, you guys have diversified in as far as what you're doing with your hobby and everything, or so your supply chain and everything. So it's pretty kind of cool. So Bill Decker says he loves his Nexa Tiger Moth, and Farmers RC Channel, thanks for subscribing and following along. And yep, we're Ontario based as well, so that's pretty cool. So I don't think I see any other questions. Everything has been started to fly again too. Yes, Tyler's been flying. Tyler's responsible for that extra sitting in my garage. It was part of his influence, plus also Chris Gooden, who's a good supporter of the podcast as well. So
Thanks, Tyler.
So we're going to have a lot of fun moving forward. I will do my best to make sure I have a camera and everything sitting with me when I go flying at the field for the first time. I may even try and drag Tyler out there to make sure I got somebody who knows what's going on with his aircraft. Not that I can't fly it. There was a question. Someone asked us about the E-Flight Sukhoi. You know what? You go back into my YouTube channel years ago, I rocked the green one. The blue one was even better when they retuned the AS3X control on board. The green one was special with stagility mode and stuff, but it was still a fun aircraft. I eventually, yes, did sell it, but I was also transitioning through, and like my warm-up aircraft, best to have a cameraman. I got the ball cap. My warm-up aircraft now when I go 3D flying will definitely be my Flex Mamba 10. So there we go. All right. I want to very quickly thank our good friends now at Buddy RC. Remember, everybody, discount code of 10%, and that is you go to Buddy RC. Discount is RC Afterhours, and it's good till October. And again, thank you to all the Patreon supporters. You guys have been absolutely amazing over the last couple months, given all the changes that were going on, and you've remained very consistent, and it's appreciated. You keep the podcast pumping along and everything. And of course, I have to thank our guest Alpha for coming out and spending some time. You've probably had a very busy social media week with this aircraft whenever something new comes out. So your time is very much appreciated. So again, I'm Andre. That's Alpha. Thank you for coming out, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Ciao.
Ciao.